Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Another episode. And for all of our listeners, anybody new, friends, colleagues, great one today. Got another double act. Two very well-known characters from within the business. We've got Elliot Paige, who's the Director, Air Service Development at Hartsfield, Jackson, Atlanta International Airport. And another colleague and a great character, Stephen Verhasselt, who's the VP Commercial for Liege Airport. So two huge different airports, but two similar characters. Welcome, gents.
Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Right, firstly, let's just start very quickly with a brief description of both of your responsibilities. So, Elliot, over to you first.
Well, as you said, I'm Director of Air Service Development for Hartsfield, Jackson, Atlanta International Airport. Quite a mouthful of a name for an airport.
I know all about it, though. Two previous mayors, yes?
Yeah, started with Mayor Hartsfield and finished with Mayor Jackson. Both mayors were instrumental in designing the airport in a way that it can expand both in terms of runways and concourses. So our concourses expand eastward. So now we have 7 concourses and we have 5 runways. And the last runway was actually built over a highway. So there's a highway that goes partly under the runway and a taxiway. So, I'm responsible for making sure that we get a lot more airlines connected to a lot more international cities to use those runways and use those concourses. So whereas last year we had 110 million passengers, I'm expected to make it more and make that number grow annually.
You've got a tough old job ahead of you, Elliot, huh?
And the same thing for cargo. I'm responsible, me and my team, for increasing the volume of cargo on the airport and making sure we improve efficiency and that all our tenants are happy and they're making money so that we can make money.
Exactly. That's a great purpose. And I understand you're also known lovingly as Mr. Cargo.
My colleagues called me Cargo Man. And there have been some of them in our department that said, they're going to get me a uniform with a cape.
Yep.
And dress me up at Christmas time because we do this Christmas program where we tell stories to the kids. So I'm supposed to dress in a cape and tell stories about the Cargo Man to the kids.
I think that's a brilliant idea. I can just see you.
I don't think it's a brilliant idea.
In a kinky pair of boots and gloves and a mask.
Excellent. Oh, no.
Right, brilliant. Thank you. Now over to you, Stephen. Do we start with what outfits or uniforms you'd like to wear, or straight into what you do?
Let's go straight into what I do before things get out of hand again, like they did in Munich.
That's gone down.
My job as VP Commercial. My job as VP Commercial for Liege is actually we are developing 4 axes. I'm in the commercial department, so we have cargo, we have passenger, we have real estate, and we have consultancy. So for the cargo, that's well known. Passengers is a little bit less known. We have, but we do have passenger, which are mainly holiday goers flying out of Liège. Then the real estate is something that to me, on the one hand, the real estate is the driver of revenues in a cargo airport, but on the other hand, it's also one of my tools to attract and expand the Liège cargo community, which then is the driver to expand our air services. So that's why real estate is in the package. And in consultancy we see as a kind of marketing tool as well. We do consultancy, we help other airports who want to develop their cargo facilities or who want to gather part of our know-how in how to build up the cargo. So we do consultancy jobs, but let's say that it's also a way to create strategic long-term partnerships. So all these 4 departments I run out of my office in Hong Kong. I'm based in Hong Kong. My team is in Belgium. So I have a team for cargo, a team for smaller team for passenger, a smaller team for real estate, and basically consultancy. It's me. There's not really a team. So if you look at it time-wise in percentage of my time, I would say I spent 2% on consultancy, 3% on passengers, 10% on real estate, and 700% on cargo.
All right, another cargo man. So we got the dynamic duo for cargo here with us today. So that's fantastic. Now, guys, things are moving so fast, as we know. I mean, even day to day, things change. Whether it's international, whether it's domestic, whether it's regulatory, governmental, everything's changing so fast. So to keep things on a positive heel, because I think we all in the industry now, irrespective of the pressures and the fallout that's happened, we've got to start thinking now forward and what the new normal is going to look like. So, Elliot, what have been the biggest impacts to your business? And I know that's an obvious question because of the passenger decline, but what's been the biggest impact, and what have you realised or learned as an airport out of it?
Well, I mean, the obvious impact is precipitous decline in passenger service and loss of passengers, traveling to the airport. As saying earlier, that we went from typical of 250,000 passengers per day, sometimes with peaks of 320,000 during Thanksgiving, Christmas, to in April I saw numbers of 5,200 passengers per day. And now, as of yesterday, I've seen us we're between 37, 35, 40, pushing up to 50,000 passengers a day. So we're increasing a little bit as the lockdown is lifted in many countries and many cities, and we're seeing airlines like British Airways saying they're going to restart service connecting us to London again. So we're seeing some positive movements on the passenger side. We expect that mostly VFRs, visiting friends and relatives, will be the ones that return first. Yeah. And then some vacationers, those people who still have jobs and, it's not caught up in the recession, maybe they have fixed incomes. And then maybe next year or so, we start seeing a lot more business travel. And those are vital for the profitability of airlines. Yeah. So what we've done is we've been collaborating with the airlines to try to figure out how could we make the airport look and feel more safe for passengers to travel. So our staff and ground handlers in the airport, they're all wearing face masks, they're wearing PPE protection, both to protect themselves, because we have never shut down throughout this crisis. We've stayed open, and our folks have continued to operate the airport both on the passenger and the cargo side. Yeah, we've seen some so positively. Passengers is growing again, albeit slow. Load factors are also increasing. We had load factors in April of in the single digits. Now load factors are around 30-40% and approaching 50%. So that's good for airlines.
Okay, that's a big difference, huh?
Yeah, but for cargo has been doing tremendously. At least our airport has been doing very good, in the sense that we'll be getting a lot of charters, not a lot of regular flights, but a lot of charters. I mean, I've seen numbers as high. Thursdays, it tends to be our biggest day. This week, we're expecting about 58 freighters in one day. I think last week we had about 60 on our peak day. And so it's a lot of activity on the cargo side, a lot of PPEs coming in, a lot of equipment, medical supplies, food supplies. So cargo is pretty busy. We started last year to do certain things to expand our facility, and I think we're seeing the benefits of doing that now.
Okay, very good, Elliot. And Stephen, same question.
Well, for us, it's of course, as I mentioned, we do have passenger. Our passenger terminal has been closed. It's still closed. It will open up again in July. but the impact is definitely can never be as what it is for Elliot, simply because of the fact that he has 300,000 passengers in a busy day. I have 300,000 passengers in a very busy year. So percentage-wise, I went as much down as Elliot did, or even more, because we really closed down. But in absolute numbers, it's a different story. In the cargo, we've been extremely busy. I mean, it started already when COVID-19 hit China. We saw the first charter requests actually going eastbound. So there was really a surge of charters going eastbound in February, and even going into March. But then in March, COVID-19 spread out, and Europe got hit as well. Belgium got hit pretty badly. And then we've seen as China gradually started up, the PPE material started coming the other way, and there again it's mainly charters. So on the one hand, our scheduled services, they kept going, because all our scheduled services are freighters as well. We did of course see a downsizing of the intra-Europe operation, the overnight intra-Europe operation, which made sense, but it never shut down, it kept going. But we've seen a real increase. I mean, the numbers until now, I'm not going to go too deep into details, but to give you an idea, in February, the Europe-China lane compared to last year increased by more than 35%. And the other way around, in April, the China-Europe lane, the westbound lane, increased as well by about 40%. Of course, meanwhile, there are other markets who are down, but the fact is that, well, when all the belly capacity goes out, everything that still has to move in freighters, and as we are the freighter hub who has been promoting freighter services and who has everything in place to receive freighters and even charter capacity, well, it's normal that airlines looked at us first. So we even had to go as far as opening what we call the pop-up handler, which was a temporary handling facility, a facility that was ready to be operated by Airbridge, but they postponed acceptance. And then together with the good people of WFS, we managed to put a pop-up facility in place to handle the charters that could not be handled by others because we were simply full. So we really had to respond quickly, and so far so good. I mean, it is clear that everything is returning a little bit to normal, that the big numbers of charters are not there anymore, but there's still a lot of freight moving. But it's clear that the peak has passed, and that's good, because that means that we are all going back to the normal situation where we all want to go back to, I guess.
Okay, very good. Now, what I just want, and one of the things that you've spoken about there, you mentioned there, Stephen, about going back to normal, and Elliot, you spoke about how the numbers are creeping back up again, which is great, and the changes are so quick. Now, safety obviously is paramount, and it's always going to be the number one in our industry, and it's proven to be over the years one of the most safest ways of transport. It's the confidence issue now, both on the passenger side and the cargo side, and the controls that are in place. But the thing that's still, I just can't for the life of me understand why, if something makes sense somewhere, why isn't common sense prevailing in lots of areas, and so that there's commonality, so people can actually see, if I go to an airport here, I'm going to be treated the same. When I get off, I'm going to be treated the same, and everything that happens in between is the same as well. Now, why on earth is that not happening? That's open. That's open
That's
to
a
either of
question
you.
that doesn't only go for the health issues. I mean, I'm still wondering why, as far as security is concerned, why I need to take my shoes off in one airport and in the other I don't. Where I can leave my computer inside and in another airport I don't. There is no such thing as a global standard, it seems, and I guess for the health measures, it's going to be the same. I'm absolutely with you. I think it would make a lot more sense if it was, not only because probably the best practice should be the practice that's done everywhere, but also it would give the confidence that people need to start traveling again. But unfortunately, I don't see it happen, and well, I hope I'm wrong this time.
Yeah, on the security side, because I've asked that, and everywhere where I've ever done audits or where I've been responsible, I'm looking at, you know, the different types of equipment, and some have got different shortfalls, different benefits, etc. So I can appreciate that, but what I never understand is why, when people are in the queues, there isn't better use of information and communication to say, you might be used to having to take your shoes off. You don't have to do them at this particular airport because we've got such and such equipment. That would also be a positive thing towards the airport, so that people can actually start to motivate or incentivize themselves to always be doing the best. Now, Elliot, what's your take on that?
I mean, even in the US, you find that different airports have different procedures, even though we have one TSA and one Customs and Border Protection. And then when you take that across countries, across continents, the disparities are even bigger. I mean, a lot of it depends on, airports are not homogeneous. Airports have different budgets, they have different types of leadership, they have different priorities. You know, an airport like Atlanta, we get a lot of passengers, so we prioritize the fast movement of passengers. And that may mean that we may not check as much, or keep passengers as much. We're very efficient in checking IDs and getting them through security. Whereas, an airport like Liege may be very efficient in cargo and focused on cargo because that's where their revenue is coming from. So it depends on where the priorities lie for each airport. And that trickles down to these disparities in standards. Because if the standard is not important for that revenue generating area, there's less incentive to focus on it. So unfortunately, you have to take off your shoes in one airport or not the next. I travel a lot for work, and we, as Stephen, and we experience this all the time, where you're going through one airport and what you put in your bag, it's X-rayed and it passes through no problem. And you get through the next airport and then you have to empty your entire bag because you have a nail foil and it's dangerous. You could hijack the plane with a nail foil.
Yeah.
So, it just depends on what the priorities are, I think, for the different airports, as it is for cities, and how they're responding to COVID-19. Some cities have recognized the connection between consumers, people, and the economy, and others didn't see the connection and just want to save the economy. But if you don't have a lot of people staying alive, you don't have an economy. So, Yep.
There's a lot we could say about that. But coming back to and on that this subject matter. What I'm trying to work out now is to get people more confident. I think they need to start seeing consistency. So even if it's on the cargo side, how are people cooperating with masks, etc. When it comes down to hygiene, which I think is going to take a much higher degree of importance moving forward in all businesses, occupational health and hygiene is going to have a different outlook moving forward. But with that, some areas saying 1 meter, some 1.5 meters, some 2 meters, how often you clean, where you clean, when you get on an aircraft. I just seen a couple of videos this morning of some flights that were coming into Heathrow. Mm-hmm. They were absolutely jam-packed, just like before.
Wow.
And the majority of the people you would expect to all be wearing masks, and they weren't. And I just think the time is now coming whereby people have got to communicate better, collaborate better, and control better. And people have got to start issuing a code of conduct to make sure that everybody understands what is expected of everybody. Because if you don't, and you rely on common sense, there's going to be a lot more conflict and a lot more problems for other people to deal with who are not trained to deal with that particular area of how humans interact. Are you doing anything specific in Atlanta, Elliot, to cover those things?
I think we're trying, and I think the airlines are trying. And like I said, for us, all our staff, we're required to wear masks. If I go to the airport today, as I did one weekend ago to welcome an Antonov 124 who came with PPEs, and we had the press there, and to kind of promote cargo. Yeah. And we all wear masks. We all wore masks. Passengers are required to wear masks. If they don't have masks, either the airport or the airline will give masks to the passengers. Airlines have promised that they're deep cleaning the aircrafts, and they're marketing this on the website. So you click on any American carriers on their website, and you see that they have videos of them deep cleaning the planes. They've removed all the magazines, so they reduce all the touch points. The staff, the crew, they're wearing masks. They're wearing gloves. But the thing is, we can't force passengers to wear masks. So there are some passengers who come and say, well, I don't want to wear a mask, but we offer it to them. And in addition to that, airlines are practicing social distancing on the aircraft. Now, sometimes the story that you just explained, it happens. We had an Alaskan carrier that a guy put on Twitter that was jam-packed with passengers. But the airlines that do that, I think, will lose credibility because passengers want to be safe. So they'll go to the airports that are safe, both at the origin and destination, and they'll fly with the carriers that are safe. I'm ready to go on a plane today, but I'm only going to go on those planes, those airlines that I see are practicing all the different procedures to keep me and my fellow passengers safe. And at the airport I'm traveling from and to are also practicing those. So not only do we have to do them, we also have to market them. We have to show the public through billboards, through advertisements, through the social media, whatever it is, that, hey, this is a safe bubble or safe facility for you to go in. We're not guaranteeing that you won't get COVID, but we're doing everything within our power, according to the health authorities' advice, to make sure that you don't get it.
100%. One of the things you said there about not being able to insist on a passenger wearing a mask, what I'm getting at is, because I've asked a couple of airlines as well, why you don't readjust the cabin address and everything from check-in to online allocation of your seat that actually says, if you are flying on our airline, you must or you shall wear a face mask at all times, and this is for the protection of all other passengers, not just yourself. Because then it gives the crew and everybody else the opportunity to say, well, I'm very sorry, but these are the areas that you agreed to when you purchased the ticket, when you got your boarding pass, etc. You must wear your mask. Because if you don't and you leave it up for choice, that's when human beings start to become a little bit different, indifferent, aggressive, and all those things happen. So what I'm trying to ascertain is, why aren't people just agreeing that certain things should be in place, code of conduct, end of story. So that's just my point. So Stephen, on the cargo side now, and also from all the personnel at the airport, one of the things I wanted to ask you is the pressures now that are on handling companies, and especially in some of the larger airports where the competition is so great. It's going to become very difficult for them to be able to ramp up, to contract, to have controls, etc. Do you see any, I'm not going to say opportunity, but do you see any chance that there might be a transition to people starting to think of a new model with regards to the Holy Trinity, the airport, the airline, and the ground handling company? Do you think there's a possibility of any transition towards a new model?
I'm not even sure if there are new models. I mean, there are already so many models. You have airports like the ones that we see in China, where the airport is also the handler,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
that's one model. Then you have other airports where you have one airport and one handler. Then you have other airports where there's multiple handlers. So there are already many different models. I'm not sure which one is the best. I'm sure they all have things they all have positives and negatives. Our model is a multiple handler model, and then the issue is of course that sometimes when it comes down to contract negotiations, it might come down to the race to the bottom. And fact is, if you pay peanuts, you get monkey business. That's what happens. So we are trying to, on the one hand, we believe that in our model, which is an open access model, but still with a lot of control, because in order to control the handlers, as you own the land and the buildings in the first line, I mean, whoever doesn't get a building, he can get a handling license, but he will not get into business. So there is a way of controlling it. Is there a new model? Well, I think everybody is always talking about cooperation. I've seen it now. I mean, we have seen that this cutthroat competition is maybe not the answer, and maybe cooperation is the answer. But then immediately you get in trouble with people looking into the fact that the handlers are making agreements which makes it illegal as well. So it's a thin line. It's a thin line. Is there a better model? Yeah, probably. Do I know it? No. If not, I would implement it tomorrow. Is handling an issue? Well, I don't know. I mean, I've seen. We're all long time in the business, so we know that the handlers used to be the airlines who did handling for themselves, and then added third-party handling. Then it moved into outsourcing. We saw the handlers, which the big handlers like Swissport and WFS and Menzies, who you see all around, or the local handlers. And now we see a trend again that says maybe insourcing is the way, because the airlines, at least they understand our business, while the handlers are, well, it's a business of their own, but it's not our business. So which is the better model? I don't know. Is there? I've seen positive signs. I mean, I've seen that in times of challenges and well, let's say in times of challenges and under capacity, I see there is a way to cooperate. Now I just hope that when we go back to the normal days, that we also don't go back to the normal practices where the sense for cooperation changes back into everyone taking care of itself and compete as before. So I do hope this cooperation and also this feeling where people understand that we are not in normal conditions, so we can accept that not everything is perfect, and we all agree that everybody is trying his best. If that could be the new model, I would definitely support that. Let's get away from the claims way of doing business, and let's try to go into as good as possible business. But maybe I'm dreaming now.
No, but it's well, like I say, it's always good. It's always good to dream. But one of the things that you said there about the airport being able to, I do apologise now. I'm not sure what's happening here. I keep getting everybody else hearing that same noise.
Not hearing anything.
No. Okay, very good. One of the things that I wanted to say there, Steve, you mentioned about the airports having certain control and certain directives. Do you think that it makes sense now that the airports themselves start putting certain criteria and certain collaborative direction in place before they allow parties just to conduct business on their premises and their borders?
No, well, I think that's what's happening, but it's something that it's difficult to force upon. Actually, you have to sell it. I mean, when you look
I agree,
at, for example, a data sharing platform, if I'm gonna tell my airlines and my handlers, look, I'm the airport and I oblige you to do it because I need these data, well, that's never gonna work. But if I can show them that, look, if you go in with this and you feed into this data, you get applications which are fed by you and by your colleagues, and it will result in faster transit times of the cargo, or it will result in less waiting times for the trucks at your facility, or it will result in better communication with customs and phytosanitary and so on, then it makes sense. So that's what I mean. It's better to show an advantage than to simply oblige. I mean, there are maybe airports who can easily oblige their customers to do things. I'm in an environment where that is not just possible because I mean, some of my handlers are in long-term contracts, and when we signed that contract 10 or 12 years ago, we didn't have a clue that one day we would ask them to share their data, because honestly, 12 years ago, when you asked me about data, I would think of June 10th and May 13th and other data, but but that's dates, that's not data. So that's, well, my English is limited, as you know.
No. Your English is good enough, my friend.
But that's the reality. I mean, the technology changes, the way of doing business changes, and the contracts are not up to it, and that's why I say you cannot oblige. You have to sell it as a package. You have to tell as an airport, look, I'm doing this, and I'm doing this because I do believe that it will help all of us to get better at what we are doing. And if you explain it to everybody like that and they do see results, it's a lot better way than simply oblige. Because if you're going to oblige it, I mean, those smart guys with all these cloud platforms, they keep telling me whatever comes out of it is only as good as what you put into it. But that goes for a lot of things.
A lot of things. No, I agree with you, but
that's with data. And if I'm going to oblige without explaining why and without explaining the benefit, well, what are people going to dump into it? So I really think we need to go into this cooperation, and that is something that we were doing already. I mean, we've been on this path for, I would say, at least 5 years, but it's not a straightforward line. It's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. That's how these things go. But I think all over, again, as I said, also during this crisis and with all the challenges, we saw that cooperation is often bringing the results that are needed rather than claims and threats and penalties. So I hope we can continue in that.
Yeah, no, I think the new way makes sense. And what about yourself, Elliot?
No, I agree with Stephen. We kind of do the same thing. It's, we've tried the penalties and fees and these kind of things, and they really, it's a strain on our resources, the airport's resources, to police these things, and you really want to get ahead of them. So over the last, at least since I've been at the airport, we've been working on improving our relationship and really creating ownership and collaboration with the stakeholders. An example is that when we wanted to implement a cargo community system in the US, when no one has ever heard of it, and we wanted to implement it in Atlanta. we didn't call up the tenants and said, from now on, you're going to implement a cargo community system. We brought them into a room, those who are interested, and we said, we want to show you something new and ask what you think about it. And, and we showed them how we can solve some of their problems, how we can solve the problem of trucks showing up to, 10 trucks showing up for one dock door. And truckers arguing to get to the counter, and and how can we solve some of these problems for you? And we showed them what a cargo community system, and some of them were like, could we implement it next week? And I said, well, no, I mean, we need a lot more people to come on board. So they became the advocates of the cargo community system, pushing it in the community because they saw the benefit of it. And the airport became sort of the focal point with them leading. I mean, in a way, we were leading, but we're from the background, but we were really pushing the private sector and really create an incentive, because the recognition is that if you can reduce your costs, improve your efficiency, that's more money coming into your company. That's more benefit to you. So, and I think that's the approach that we've taken with a lot of different areas. It's also important to build a relationship. So, as I mentioned, we had Antonov 124, and there was a ground handler that had the press, but we went there, made sure we brought a team, supported them, said what a wonderful company they were, just like all the other companies. And that sort of builds that camaraderie that we're on the same team.
Yeah.
We want you guys to be successful. So we're not penalizing you. If I ask you to take up FOD or to make sure that, all your staff's badge on time, it's not because we want to penalize you, but because we want you to be successful.
Yeah.
And we also have and when they have a problem, they know that they can call on us to help them solve that problem pretty easily. So when one of my ground handlers has a challenge with customs and border protection, or an exporter have a problem with customs, I had a problem where one exporter was exporting armored vehicles. There's a manufacturer in Atlanta, and customs here had never seen these types of vehicles, didn't understand what these military-looking things were, and refused to let them out of Atlanta Airport. So I got customs and I took them to the factory, and I made them walk the plant, and I made them touch the vehicles and sit in them and move around in them, and they saw the whole facility and got a presentation from the company. And after that, they were comfortable with the product. So it's relationship building to improve collaboration, but it's also creating ownership by, once the idea is young and you're introducing it, bring the stakeholders in very early so that they can be part of the development. And that's important, not just because the airport wants to implement more efficiency and all of that, but there may be things that we as airport officials would not have thought of. Yeah. And because we're not, at least me, I'm not an expert in just cargo. I'm a generalist, and I know a lot about a lot of things, but specifically about one thing, I know very little. So I need these experts who are in the field, who have an incentive to do this, to come in and advise on how can we implement a cargo community system, a transparent platform that everyone can access to make sure that they have complete track and trace. How do we make it work for you, for your system, so that you don't have to change your system in a big way? You don't have to increase costs. You don't have to retrain your staff completely for a totally new system. Tell us how we can do it. This is the idea. This is the big idea. This is what we want to do. This is what we think the benefit to you is. And you now have to help us implement it. Yeah. And those are what we have found that's worked so far.
Good. Yeah. Now, and that endorses the WHO 3C principle of, I think it's communicate, cooperate, or coordinate, and collaborate. So I agree that's really important, and fair play to you both for adopting that openness. Now, with that in mind, and with the hygiene issue and the arguments that have been going on for so long with regards to environment and other issues, now we've got this this awareness by everybody that the more things you touch or the more things you come in contact with, the more risk there is for yourself and for others. So that elephant in the room, the paperless environment on cargo. So do you actually think now that, you know, there's going to be some sort of leverage because of the hygiene issue to stop the poor old drivers having to bring documentation and enter it at a control post and then go to a reception area and then go to the inner reception and then get a weight slip and then go back again? Do you think there's going to be some development at long last with regards to that particular issue? Stephen?
Well, thanks for thanks for a nice ball you throw at me. I have my ideas about paperless and why it works in some places and why it doesn't work in other places. And to me, it comes down to if you could throw some bitcoins in between some paperless documents, maybe that would solve part of the problem. And I don't want to point fingers at anybody, but on the other hand, we all know that these things are still ongoing in places. Of course, not in Liège. I mean,
of course,
ridiculous, but in places. So are we gonna go 100% paperless? Well, it will be an incentive. I mean, not so much the paperless, but as you say, the walking in and out of rooms. I think this is the perfect promotion for a truck application where all that at least is being done without having to park the truck, get to the office, come back to the truck, and so on and so on. That would be it will definitely be a promotion of this kind of apps, and I'm talking about the truckers, but there's a lot of other documents. I mean, the handovers of the documents for phytosanitary inspections, the customs who are still looking into documents. It's not only the fact that they are looking into these documents, but all these documents are brought in by somebody, handled by somebody else, taken out by somebody else. And if there's one person in this chain who has an issue, then before you know it, your whole terminal goes down. So yeah, I do believe this is an incentive. But are we gonna go 100% paperless? Well, I was just talking about it over a beer at the weekend. When I've been to university, not many people know that and even less believe that. But I did go, and I actually wrote my final essay about paperless office.
Send me a copy, will you?
That was when there were still some animals who could speak at that time, but I was very optimistic at that time. We're talking more than 25 years ago. I was very optimistic that the paperless office would be implemented within 20 years to come. Well, I'm still optimistic. I'm still sure it will be implemented within 20 years to come. So nothing has changed.
Okay, but you agree there's a great opportunity now for whether it's customs to stop demanding in certain countries that you only use blue ink and all sorts of documents.
It makes more sense now because it gives. Before we were always saying it's going to be more efficient, it's going to cost time, it's going to save costs. That's all good, and that's all people. Everybody likes that, but on the other hand, you're dealing with people who are thinking, well, more efficient or less cost, not my money, not my time. But now with the health issue, you bring in a completely different stance where it does get personal. I mean, you bring it from a company level to a personal level, and maybe that's gonna help to implement. So yeah, I'm sure there is an opportunity to increase this kind of well, let's say, touchless way of doing business. I'm not going to call it paperless way of doing business. I think touchless way I think touchless is more important than paperless at this point in time. But in the end, come down will come down to the same, because you cannot do touchless without being paperless anyway. So.
No, I agree. Okay, well, that's good from you. I appreciate that. Also, an old friend, Dave Ambridge, will be pleased to see that somebody who was optimistic 20 years ago is still optimistic for the next 20 years. So I'm sure he'll be well with that. And Elliot, same question to you, because there's obviously certain areas or links in the chain who are very against it because of divulging too much information or what they see as conflict or pricing, etc. But at the end of the day, everybody's happy enough to be online banking now, even with the risks. So there's no reason why those particular paper issues couldn't be overcome.
No, you're right. In our case, when we implemented in November last year the cargo community system, we weren't really thinking of any health risk. We were just thinking of efficiency, cutting costs, not having truck drivers come to the airport and because they don't have any information on what cargo is available for pickup, that they don't pick up anything. So, but now we're looking at it as an opportunity to market that and push it as protection for staff, protection, not having so many touch points, so much paper, if everything is digital throughout the supply chain. Now, you do have your detractors, you do have folks who are accustomed to using paper and they're concerned that the papers may end up in the wrong hand and that the digital platform may be hacked and all of that. But often the other thing happens, the paper is easily transferred, it's easily copied, it's easily,
of course,
and the paper allows for a lot more violations of privacy and confidentiality than does the digital approach. So I think it's a little bit of education of what the digital approach offers. Customs, for instance, they're pretty happy. They would love to see a system like that implemented. And I think it would be nice if it happened for us on the federal level. If the federal level said, look, because of COVID-19, because of security, because of a variety of things, we want you to have totally digital cargo so that the customs can check all cargo and that you can actually attach photographs of the shipment on the line for each airway bill so that they can check complete security before, after, during the flight, on destination, etc. Because if that happens, then it really moves the needle forward for all of us. If it's a federal requirement and we all have to do it, it'll be nice if the World Customs Union or IATA or TIACA, one of these international organizations, that started marketing and saying, this is a great opportunity for creating more paperless offices, more paperless shipment, digital cargo all the way. This is the time to do it. If there was never one before.
Yeah, 100%. Good. So maybe
you're a good advocate for that. That's a very good idea.
Yep. So maybe as a catalyst of Atlanta and Liege coming together on the podcast, the next 20 years will be achieved a lot sooner.
Yeah, hopefully.
I hope so. If not, we're all gonna get old.
Yeah, no, well, that's something that's going to happen anyhow. It's already starting to happen. Look at this. But listen, gentlemen, thank you very, very much for joining. Is there one last point that I could ask you? What do you hope now will be a very positive outcome of this terrible incident? If you could, what one thing would you like to remain afterwards or to be introduced as a result of what's happened?
Well, I would say that these things are going to happen from time to time. It may not be a virus, it may be a disaster, it may be whatever else. There's always going to be some outside shock, and we really need to be better prepared for them. And being better prepared means, part of it means that the very topic we were talking about just before, using more technology. Because cargo is still so far behind when it comes to technology. It's amazing that passengers have gotten rid of tickets, and we're still using airway bills after all these years and all the advocacy and push by the WCO to get rid of and have e-airway bills. So getting the technology right and getting it, efficient is important. Putting the right types of leadership in place that can function well in crisis and make the right decisions, common sense decisions. We talked about the need to equalize standards. One of the ways to equalize standards is just to call your neighbors, call the people you're doing business with, and find out what they're doing, and talk about what would be some of the best practice for us to do collaboratively, so that we create equal standards on both sides that we can both market. It's just communication. So leaders that can do that and don't think that they have all the ideas themselves, those are the ones that will pull us through any crisis in the future. And that's also all part of resiliency. Diversifying. Airports need to diversify their revenue sources. It can't be from just passenger or cargo. It has to be from real estate as well. I'm impressed with Liege and their real estate initiatives. We could do better and learn from that and have more real estate developments that are also creating revenue for us. We have some, but we have a long way to go to be like Liege in that sense, and many other airports that I really admire. So I think I'd leave it at that, but it's really creating resiliency by diversifying your revenue sources, leadership and using technology to advance ourselves and prepare for the next crisis.
What an opportunity, boys. Like you see these towns twinned with. Now you can put a sign up at Hartsfield, twinned with Liege, and Liege twinned with Atlanta. Hey?
We're doing that already. We have relationships with Schiphol Airport. We're building relationships with Mumbai Airport and a couple of other airports, creating what we call trade corridors. So we're trying to equalize. It's funny we're talking about this topic. We're trying to equalize the ground operation standards for cargo, so that, because the air is the same, but the bottleneck for cargo is always on the ground. So if we're looking at each other and we say, well, we have all the same certification, the same cargo community system, the same kinds of systems, sea farmer certification, whatever it is, good distribution practices, and then we can market that together, then we make ourselves the attractive point for moving cargo between both our airports.
Yeah, no, exactly, Elliot. Exactly. And what about you, Stephen? Last few words, my friend.
Well, for me, the point that we have been advocating in Liege for so many years is that freighters are important, but also that the air cargo and the freighters are a complete different business than the passenger. I mean, and that should not only be separated in operations, but also in regulatory issues and all that. And we've seen now that it is possible. I mean, all of a sudden, open skies for freighters became nearly a global reality. I mean, all the schedules went out of the door and all the charters were approved. I have not heard of one charter who has been blocked by somebody else or who has been denied for traffic right issues or others. So I just hope that we proved our point, that the fact is that air cargo is important, not only for the aviation industry, but for the whole world to keep running, be it perishables to bring food on the table, be it pharma, be it PPE materials, be it tents and everything when there's a disaster strikes. So our business is important, and it shouldn't be too much hampered by bureaucracy and especially, and I come back to these open skies. I mean, fact is that in a bilateral agreement, a bilateral agreement is between 2 points, and between 2 points, when you fly a passenger plane, those who go there, they come back. That's easy. Now, we've seen, and I started with it. I told you that in February we had a lot of charters going from Europe to China with PPE material, and in China there was nothing to come back with because the economy was closed. So they had to find another way to optimize. Same 2 months later in the China-Europe. And then the only way to solve that is to come up with a system where freighters can make their way and follow the cargo requirements rather than fly following the obligations of bilateral. So as air cargo is important and as freighters are a completely different business, I really hope that this open skies for freighters, that it will not disappear with the COVID virus, because I hope the COVID virus disappears as quickly as possible, and I hope that open skies for freighters will stay with us, because that's really the basis of improving our business. If we can, if the airlines are free to build their schedules, they will go to the airports where there is efficient. They will follow these corridors that Elliott is trying to build, that we are trying to build with some of our airport partners like Bangkok, like Nairobi, like Addis. I mean, we are doing these kind of things as well. But I think in order to make it efficient, in order to market it well, we should get rid of these limitations which come under the form of bilateral agreement, which are really written following the spirit of a passenger operation. That's the reality. That's what I hope will stay. And then also this sense of rather cooperate and try to grow high together instead of threaten with penalties and claims. That's maybe another important issue that I wish would stay around.
Very good. Well, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure, and look forward to seeing you somewhere, sometime in the near distant, so in the very near future. And until then, really appreciate it. Great success with what you're doing, and good luck with everything. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Chris.
Elliot.
Cheers.
Thanks, Stephen.
Bye-bye.